$100? You're telling me all you could make this month is $100? What kind of man are you, Steven?
Mom screamed, throwing the money in my face. A 13-year-old man, I replied, making her give me a resounding slap.
It's your fault we're suffering like this. If your dad was alive, everything would have been so much better.
I know, Mom, and I'm very sorry.
Shut up. You're not sorry, but you will be.
She walked towards me and picked up the money that she had previously thrown in my face before climbing the stairs, entering her room, and banging the door. Hey, I'm Steven. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons below so we can go on with the story. Thank you. We used to be a very happy family. Before I was born, my dad was offered a life-changing position in the United States, and we moved. I was born into luxury, and everything was set out for me. For people who haven't lived this life, it may seem like the dream life. But if you were born into it like I was, you'd understand that life quickly gets boring. At the age of 10, I was already looking for excitement in places I shouldn't have. This was when people started noticing how special I was. A modeling agency representative came to visit us one day, explaining my special glowing skin to my parents. He wanted me to work with them, but to my mother's surprise and dismay, my dad disagreed, saying that I was too young and they should come back in 8 years' time. I hid under the staircase and listened to the whole conversation. Once the agent left, my parents started arguing.
How can you let us miss out on such a great opportunity?
Steven is only 10 for Christ's sake.
And so what? Children start modeling from childbirth. We're missing out on so much money.
All you care about is money. What's wrong with you? We have more than enough and more will keep coming.
My dad angrily walked out of the house and my mom followed, still screaming at him. They were shocked when they saw the agent sneaking into my room from the window. I was standing behind them, shocked as well. My dad quickly grabbed the foot of the agent before he could fully enter, throwing him on the floor and almost knocking him out. Even my mother, who was previously antagonizing my dad, started kicking the agent. They called the cops on him and he got arrested for breaking and entering, warranting him to pay a huge fine, including money to fix my room window, which he had broken before being set free. I continued with my bad habits, and one day, I was hanging out with some guys in an alley. They convinced me to try out a new juice that wasn't in the market yet, and I was so excited. However, for some reason, the juice rendered me unconscious, and while drifting in and out of consciousness, I felt them searching me. I woke up and it was around 7 p.m. This was surprising because I snuck out of the house around noon. I knew my parents would be so worried. I decided to call them, and this was when I noticed that my gold chain, watch, wristband, wallet, and phone were all gone. Wow, my so-called street friends drugged and robbed me. It didn't bother me too much because I knew I had multiple of these items at home. I began walking home. Halfway to my destination, I met my father, looking half crazed. He was walking with a cop.
Steven, you made me so worried. Where have you been?
I kind of got drugged and robbed and,
Huh? What? You know what? Never mind. I'm glad you're safe. We'll settle the issue with those guys tomorrow.
We started walking home, and as we got close, I noticed that our house was surrounded by cops. Suddenly, the cop working with my dad signaled my dad with some information, and my dad told me to quickly rush into the house while they walked away to have a private conversation. I ran home, and all the cops started cheering. They hugged and shook me while some just patted my head before leaving. My mother had a swollen face. It looked like she had been crying for hours.
Steven, my boy.
She lifted me up. I cried too as she hugged me tight. Seeing how worried I made everyone, I decided to change my bad habits forever. But as fate would have it, the decision was already made for me. The cops left and we waited for my dad for hours. After my mom and some policemen, whom she had contacted, tried calling him multiple times and he didn't pick up, my mother resumed her tears and worry. It was midnight and my dad hadn't yet returned. The cops told us to stay at home and wait, but Mom ignored them and took me out. We went to the last place I had seen my dad, but there were no clues there. We searched and searched, and then my mom decided that we should go to the cops' house. I secretly called the cops to tell them what we were doing in case we ran into trouble. We knocked at the cop's door and he opened up, shocked at our revelation. He said he didn't spend up to 10 minutes with my dad before leaving him and coming back home. My mom didn't believe him and accused him of kidnapping my father. He tried to talk, but she was already on top of him, trying to beat him up. Unfortunately for her, the man was stronger, so he simply held her hand and told her to calm down, saying that he would try his best to find her husband. The cops came and forced us to go home, even positioning 2 patrol cars around our house to make sure we didn't leave. That night, we couldn't sleep. Our neighbors joined the cops to search for my dad throughout the night, but we weren't let out because of my mom's previous actions. Instead, we were forced to watch everything unfold on TV. 2 days later, they found my dad in the same alley that I'd been robbed. They'd searched this alley a few times and nothing was there, meaning someone had recently dropped him there. Unfortunately, he wasn't breathing anymore, and our lives changed forever. Back to the present, 3 years have passed since the incident. My mom was lazy and refused to work, so I'd been stuck being the breadwinner of the family for years. She reminded me every day that I was the cause of my father's death. I wasn't going to school anymore, so we survived through the odd jobs that I did around the neighborhood. I couldn't get a real job because I was too young. I also started a YouTube channel teaching people handyman skills that I had learned from my odd jobs. My YouTube channel quickly blew up and started giving me more income than my handyman jobs. But I continued doing the handyman jobs because they were my source of content, and the YouTube channel couldn't survive without it. Apparently, people wanted to learn handyman skills so they wouldn't have to pay for every little thing that spoiled around their house. One afternoon, a French couple came to see my mother. She sent me to my room and locked the door, which I thought was a really strange action to take. A few hours later, my mom came up to my room and explained that I had gotten a great job and would be moving in with the French couple for a short while. She explained that this was the same man who had come a few years ago to hire me as a model. He was back now and willing to triple the contract money, just so I could work with him. The man who tried breaking into my room?
Oh, he apologized for that.
She told me that we would become billionaires in a short while if I agreed to go. I was skeptical, but put my fears aside and decided to go with them. She explained that it was just a 2-year contract and I would be back home in a short while. I left with the couple and started living in a mansion filled with other young boys who were also models. On the first day of my arrival, a boy that was around 18 years congratulated me and welcomed me to the cage of my dreams. I was confused and asked him what he meant, but he laughed and told me that he was just joking. When I told the French man what the boy said and asked for an explanation, he waved it, and that was the last time I saw the 18-year-old boy. He just disappeared. I was termed the golden boy because of my dark brown skin, and everyone was in love with me. I made a lot of money, but was never given a dime. Our director, the Frenchman, explained that I would get all the money when it was time to go back home, after my 2 years were up. I agreed and told him that I couldn't wait to go back home, and he seemed disappointed. I spoke with my mother almost every day and asked her to come and visit me. She promised that she would do that soon. A year and 6 months passed, but I never saw her. She kept promising that she would still come. Despite the fact that she had been so mean to me, I still loved and missed her. I was a child after all. Unfortunately, it seemed like she didn't feel the same way. When I complained to our director, he explained that she didn't want to see me and was only picking my calls because they were paying her to do so. What? I got so mad that I didn't call her again. Funny enough, she didn't call either. After 2 years, I went to meet my director and told him that our contract had ended and I wanted to go home. He simply laughed.
Home where? To a mother who doesn't care about you? Do you know that she was practically renting you out? We paid her for everything. She doesn't care about you, but we do. We are your real family.
The director was able to convince me to stay back. I was angry and hated my mother. I always wondered what kind of a mother she was. One day, I decided to call her and yell at her, asking her why she was so comfortable abandoning her 13-year-old son with strangers for 3 whole years just because of money. I tried her number, but it wasn't going through. Her email and social media were also inactive. I started to get worried. I told my director about this and he laughed, wondering why I still cared about her. The next day, a photoshopped picture was posted on her Instagram with the caption,
"Living my best life in Bali."
What? Mom hated Bali. At this point, I knew something was seriously wrong. One morning, some security guards entered my room and told me that I had an emergency photo shoot in London, so I had to leave immediately. As we were going, I asked why we were going through the back door and they couldn't give me an answer that made sense. I immediately threw my bags at them and ran towards the front door where I saw my mother looking like a homeless person, dirty and haggard. She screamed and started crying when she saw me. I demanded an explanation from the director, but instead they stripped me and knocked me out. Next thing, I woke up in a cell next to my mother. My head was in her lap.
I'm so happy to see you, Stephen.
I quickly disentangled myself from her. Happy? You abandoned me for 3 whole years.
I didn't. I didn't receive any money from these thieves for a year and a half. I begged and I begged before they sent me the contract money. When I got it, I decided to give you a surprise visit, but since no one was expecting me, they didn't prepare for my arrival. I walked straight into their conversation and I heard everything. These are the men behind your father's death, and the cop from that night is a part of their gang. They did all of this just to get you to work for them, and they've been making billions off you while promising to give you just 10%. Also, they were never planning to let you go. When they noticed me, they immediately knocked me out and put me in a cell. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, so no one came to look for me. Even when I'd been missing for months, that dirty cop found a way to make it seem like I traveled to Bali to enjoy life. He bragged about it for me while serving me dog food. I'd been planning my escape and finally broke out today, but they caught me before I could find you.
What? Wait a minute. How long have you been here?
A year and a half. At least that's what I think. I've been counting the days on the wall.
I felt terrible, but I knew that it'd soon be over. What they didn't know was that I had previously called the cops before seeing my mom, telling them that something terribly wrong was happening here and they shouldn't leave until they saw me. Shortly after, we heard a lot of gunshots upstairs. A gunfight broke out, but the cops won and arrested all of them. They found us downstairs in the cell and told us that we were very lucky. Pretty soon, I was back home with my mom and everything had changed. I set up my own modeling agency and hired the models from the Frenchman's agency, since it had been disbanded and they were all looking for work. The dirty cop went MIA, but was soon caught and arrested too. These people had been taking young children and using them as models, but never returning them to their parents. They gave the models peanuts so they couldn't run away and always found a way to make sure that the parents never saw the children again. I am glad that everything happened the way it did though, because it changed my relationship with my mother, boosted our financial status once again, and gave us the much-needed closure to get over the loss of my dad.